Have you ever made a decision in the heat of a moment and lived with its echo long after the moment passed? A choice not born of wisdom but of hunger, not of clarity but of desperation. We've all stood at the crossroads, between now and forever, where the temporary feels more urgent than the eternal. This is not just Esau's story. It's your story. A story about how we trade birthrights for what satisfies us right now. But what if Esau's story has been misunderstood all along? What if the man we've judged for a single moment was part of a much deeper plan? Before we dive into the story of Esau, blessed or cursed, let me invite you, like this video, subscribe to this channel. Share it with someone who may be standing at their own crossroads. Because what you're about to hear may shift how you see God, your past, and the power of choices forever. Now breathe, lean in, and let's return to the tent of Isaac, where two brothers were born, but only one would walk away with the blessing. The birthright and the bowl, how a moment changed a destiny. What if the greatest turning point in your life wasn't marked by thunder or prophecy, but by a single bowl of food? What if your legacy, your future, your place in history was traded away not in a courtroom or battlefield but in your own kitchen, in a moment of weakness? Esau's story didn't begin with betrayal. It began with hunger. The twin sons of a promise. Isaac, son of Abraham, the man to whom God had sworn by himself, waited for years before Rebekah bore him children. And when she finally conceived, the pregnancy was anything but ordinary. Two nations wrestled within her womb. Even before their birth, a spiritual war had already begun. And so came Esau and Jacob, born into prophecy and conflict. Esau, the firstborn, red, hairy, wild, and loud, burst into the world like a man of the earth. Jacob, his heel-grabbing brother, quiet and calculating, came out holding on to destiny even in the womb. Their very names were signs of what was to come. Esau, strength, wildness, the untamed spirit. Jacob, cunning, persistence, the grasping hand. The older shall serve the younger, God had said. But who could have imagined how? The craving that changed everything. Esau was a skilled hunter, a man of the open fields, the mountain trails, the blood and sweat of the hunt. His father Isaac loved him for it. The wildness, the meat, the strength, it felt like legacy. Jacob was different. He stayed among the tents, listening more than he spoke. But he was watching, always watching. One day Esau came back from the field exhausted, body aching, soul tired. The kind of weariness that blurs reason. The kind of hunger that screams louder than purpose. Jacob had prepared a stew, red, rich, steaming, spiced. And Esau wanted it. "Give me some of that red stew," he said, barely able to keep his legs. And Jacob, ever the opportunist, replied not with generosity but with a deal. "Sell me your birthright." The words must have hit like sand in the teeth. But Esau was faint, weakened, desperate. He replied, "What good is a birthright to me if I die?" He traded divine destiny for dinner. He sold a lifetime of blessing, a spiritual heritage passed down from Abraham, for a bowl of lentils. What is a birthright really? This wasn't just an inheritance of land or goats. This was the covenant line, the sacred promise. It meant spiritual authority. It meant being the carrier of God's covenant to Abraham. Through your seed, all the nations of the earth will be blessed. Esau didn't just sell his stuff. He sold his place in the story. All for a meal that would be gone in minutes. Lessons written in red. And don't we do the same? How often do we sell long-term purpose for short-term pleasure? How often do we trade calling for comfort? We give up peace for petty revenge. Give up love for lust. Give up our patience for momentary pleasure. We lose years of spiritual inheritance and minutes of emotional hunger. Esau's story is not just ancient, it's now. Just that bowl of stew lives in every impulsive decision we make without prayer. It lives in every time we let our flesh speak louder than our faith. God's perspective versus man's hunger. In the book of Hebrews, Esau is later described as godless or profane, not because he sinned more than others, but because he despised what was holy. He didn't value what God had given him. And that is the heart of this story. God gives. But do we treasure what He gives? Do we protect our purpose? Do we guard our legacy, or do we sell it for whatever our cravings demand today? A quiet reminder. Before we continue with the next part of Esau's journey, take a moment to reflect. Have you been living for the bowl instead of the birthright? Are you carrying the hunger of the moment into a decision that could alter your destiny? Let this part of Esau's story be a mirror. And if you're feeling that same kind of hunger, emotionally, spiritually, pause and pray. Ask God to help you see the bigger picture again. If this story stirred something in your heart, drop a comment below. What bowl have you had to walk away from lately? Let's encourage each other. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this video so we can bring more souls into these timeless truths. Esau's story is just beginning, but so is yours. The deception, how Jacob took the blessing. What happens when the promise meant for you is spoken over someone else? What if your own family became the place where your future was stolen, not by an enemy but by your own brother? Esau had already sold his birthright for a bowl of stew. But the final blow to his blessing wouldn't come from his own hand. It would come from deception, sown within his own household. An aging father, a sacred moment. Isaac was growing old. His eyes were dim, his bones weary, and the end of his journey was near. He called for Esau, his beloved firstborn, the one who brought him game, the one who made him taste the wild. Go out into the field, Isaac said. Hunt me some game, prepare the meal I love, and then I will bless you before I die. This wasn't just a casual prayer over dinner. This was the blessing of the firstborn, the spiritual baton, the generational prophecy, the irrevocable word of a patriarch. Once spoken, it could not be taken back. A mother listening in the shadows. But someone else was listening. Rebecca, the woman who had carried the promise from the womb. She remembered what God had told her, the older will serve the younger. She saw what Isaac couldn't or perhaps wouldn't. She loved Jacob. He was the quiet one, the obedient one. And now, in this urgent moment, she believed she had to act. But instead of trusting God to fulfill His word, she took the matter into her own hands. The plan to steal a blessing. Rebecca called Jacob. Go quickly, she whispered, eyes sharp with urgency. Bring 2 young goats. I'll prepare your father's favorite meal. You'll bring it to him and pretend to be Esau. Jacob hesitated. Not because it was wrong, but because he feared being caught. My brother is hairy. I am smooth-skinned. What if he touches me? Rebecca didn't blink. Let the curse fall on me, my son. Just do as I say. She dressed him in Esau's clothes, still carrying the smell of the field. She covered his hands and neck with goat skin. She gave him the food. And Jacob, hesitant but complicit, walked into the room of a blind father to steal what was not his. A voice familiar yet off. Isaac was suspicious. Who is it? He asked. It is I, Esau, your firstborn, Jacob lied. Isaac listened closely. The voice sounded like Jacob. But the hands were like Esau's. He touched the goat skin. He smelled the garments. Then he ate. Then he drank. Then, placing his withered hand on the head of a deceiver, he poured out the blessing meant for Esau. May God give you heaven's dew and earth's richness. May nations serve you. Be Lord over your brothers. Those who curse you be cursed, and those who bless you be blessed. And it was done. A cry that shook the tent. No sooner had Jacob left than Esau entered. The wild game was in his hands. The meal was ready. He walked in smiling, expectant, proud. Father, sit up and eat so you can bless me. Isaac trembled violently. Who was it then that brought me food? I blessed him, and indeed he will be blessed. Esau's soul shattered. Bless me too, my father, he cried. But it was too late. The blessing had been spoken. The birthright already sold. The legacy sealed. Esau wept. He shouted. He pleaded. Do you have only one blessing, my father? And with breaking heart, Isaac spoke over Esau not a curse, but a hard truth. You will live away from the earth's richness. You will serve your brother. But one day you will break free. When deception meets consequence. Let's pause here. This wasn't just family drama. This was generational war. This was prophecy colliding with manipulation. Jacob had the blessing, but not the peace. Esau had the loss, but not the curse. And we must ask, was Esau cursed or just wounded? Because he had despised his birthright, yes. But in this moment he wanted the blessing with all his soul. He cried for it. Isn't that us? Sometimes we want the blessing without the honor of the calling. Sometimes we realize the value of something only when it's lost. And sometimes we live with the ache of what might have been. God's mercy in the midst of pain. But here's the grace. Even in the midst of Esau's loss, even in the midst of Jacob's deceit, God's story didn't stop. Esau wasn't erased. His life didn't end. He became the father of a nation, the Edomites. His descendants would grow strong and fierce. And his pain? It would not define him forever. Your turn to reflect. Have you ever felt like Esau? Passed over, betrayed, wounded by someone close? Do you carry the ache of a lost opportunity, a decision you wish you could undo? Let me know in the comments. What moment in your life felt like your stolen blessing moment? Let's talk and encourage each other. And if this story is speaking to you, don't forget to like this video, subscribe for more, and share it with someone who might need this message of hope and redemption. Because though blessings can be stolen, God's grace never runs dry. And Esau's story? It's far from over. The wounded legacy, how Esau became a nation. When you've been robbed of what you thought was yours. When your cries echo unanswered in the ears of those who should have protected you. What do you do with the pain? Esau didn't just walk away from a stolen blessing. He walked away with a wound, a legacy torn from his grasp. But what the world saw as a curse, God began to rewrite in the wilderness. A man on the run, a brother in rage. The tent had grown quiet. The stew had long grown cold. But Esau's heart burned hotter than ever. He swore in his spirit, "When my father dies, I will kill my brother Jacob." This wasn't just jealousy. It was betrayal, by a brother, by a mother, by a system that seemed rigged against him. Rebekah, knowing what was coming, sent Jacob away. So once again, like Cain and Abel before them, the sons of a promise were torn apart by pain. But Esau stayed. He didn't run. And slowly, over time, he began to build something even while carrying everything he lost. The pain that built a people. The Bible doesn't focus much on Esau's daily life after the blessing was stolen. But between the lines, something powerful is unfolding. Esau becomes a father. Not just of children, but of tribes. He takes wives, first from among the Hittites, which grieves his parents. Then, noticing their displeasure, he marries one of Ishmael's daughters, seeking perhaps to bridge the ancient rift between two wounded lines. What was he trying to do? Please his father? Reclaim honor? Whatever the motive, Esau did what many do when they feel forgotten. He carved out space in the wilderness to prove he still mattered. Mount Seir, the land of the unblessed. While Jacob wandered with flocks, Esau settled in the rugged land of Seir, a place that would eventually bear his descendants' name Edom. It wasn't lush like Canaan. It wasn't the land flowing with milk and honey. But it was his dominion, his identity. And out of the rocky hills and red soil of Edom came chieftains, warriors, kings. Genesis 36 lists their names, line after line, not as a forgotten branch but as a nation in its own right. The fire of the Edomites. Esau's descendants, the Edomites, would rise in strength and pride. They would become known as fierce and independent, unwilling to bow to anyone, especially not to Israel. When Israel came up from Egypt generations later, Edom refused them passage. Why? Because old wounds don't die easily. The wound between Jacob and Esau lived on in their children. Their battle became a generational echo. Edom opposed Israel. Israel judged Edom. Prophets like Obadiah and Ezekiel would later pronounce words of warning and doom over Edom. And still Esau's name was never erased. Blessed or cursed? A question that lingers. So, was Esau cursed? Not exactly. He was wounded, overlooked, burned by betrayal. But in the same breath he was also multiplied, established, his name etched into history. The blessing he lost did not erase the hand of God from his life. He became a nation. His children became rulers. He lived to see his brother again. And in one of the most healing scenes in Scripture, when Jacob approached with fear and trembling, Esau ran to him. He embraced him. He wept. He had every reason to seek revenge. But by then Esau had built a life strong enough not to need it. The legacy you're building. Maybe you've been like Esau, bruised by someone else's choices, misjudged or passed over. But your wound doesn't have to be your identity. You can build something even from the dust of disappointment. You can shape a future not in the shadow of betrayal, but in the light of resilience. Let me ask you this, what are you doing with the pain you carry? Are you letting it poison you? Or are you turning it into power, into purpose, into a path for others to follow? Drop a comment and share your thoughts. I'd love to hear about the wilderness you've had to claim as your own. And don't forget, like this video, subscribe for more deep biblical stories, and share this message with someone walking through their own Esau moment. Esau may not have been the chosen child of promise, but he was never beyond the reach of God's attention. And neither are you. You don't need a perfect blessing to live a purposeful life. Sometimes the greatest legacies are born not from what was given, but from what was lost and survived anyway. The Edom prophecies, why God judged Esau's children. What happens when old bitterness becomes a nation's banner? When generational pain becomes national identity? Esau may have found personal healing, but his children did not. And the story of Edom becomes one of the most sobering warnings in Scripture. That unhealed wounds passed down can one day provoke divine judgment. From reconciliation to rivalry. Let's return to that powerful moment. Jacob and Esau, the once divided twins, meet after decades of silence. Jacob bows 7 times. Esau runs to embrace him. It should have been the beginning of lasting peace. But it wasn't. Because while the brothers made peace that day, their descendants never truly did. Edom's long grudge. Esau's children, the Edomites, remembered the history. They knew the story of the stolen blessing. They carried the bitterness of a father's loss and the sting of rejection. And so, when Israel came out of Egypt, wandering in the wilderness toward the promised land, Edom refused to let them pass. They said, "You shall not pass through my land, lest I come out against you with the sword." Numbers 20:18. Imagine that. Brother refusing brother. Family closing the gate on family. But it didn't end there. The fall of Jerusalem, Edom's betrayal. Centuries later, during Babylon's siege of Jerusalem, Edom had another choice. They could have remembered blood ties. They could have shown mercy. But instead, they mocked. They looted. They even helped capture fleeing Israelites. Obadiah 1 verses 11 to 12 records it plainly. On the day you stood aloof, you were like one of them. Do not gloat over your brother in the day of his misfortune. Edom stood by and cheered as Jerusalem fell. And that sealed their fate. Prophecies of judgment. The prophets, Obadiah, Ezekiel, Isaiah, Jeremiah, were not silent. They spoke fire against Edom. Because of the violence against your brother Jacob, shame shall cover you. Obadiah 1 verse 10. I will stretch out my hand against Edom and cut off from it man and beast. Ezekiel 25 verse 13. Though you soar like the eagle, from there I will bring you down. Obadiah 1 verse 4. The message was clear. You may have risen in pride, but your pride will become your downfall. You may have rejoiced in your brother's suffering, but that joy will turn to ashes. Why did God judge Edom so harshly? Because God takes family seriously. He takes loyalty seriously. He takes wounds that fester into cruelty seriously. Esau's descendants didn't just reject Israel, they rejected God's redemptive plan. Their hatred became generational. Their pride generational. Their betrayal generational. And God, who sees all things across time, called it out. The fate of Edom. Eventually, Edom was destroyed. By the time of Christ, they were absorbed and replaced. Their legacy lost in the dust of history. Herod the Great, who tried to kill baby Jesus, was an Idumean, a descendant of Edom. Even in the New Testament, the shadow of Edom still lurked, resisting God's plan, trying to crush the promised seed. But once again, prophecy triumphed. The one who came through Jacob, Jesus Christ, fulfilled every promise the Edomites tried to stop. A question for you today. Is there a bitterness you're passing down? A grudge you haven't let go of? Because the story of Edom warns us. Unhealed family wounds don't just damage individuals. They shape nations. But there's still hope. Drop a comment. Is there a generational pain you've been trying to break in your family line? Let's talk about it. Someone else may be encouraged by your journey. These stories aren't just history, they're healing for today. Esau may have forgiven Jacob, but his children did not. And their refusal to heal turned a family rivalry into a national tragedy. You and I have a choice. We can break the cycle. We can choose mercy over bitterness, restoration over revenge. God doesn't forget those who turn from hate and walk toward healing. Now, was Esau truly cursed? Or have we misunderstood his story all along? While Jacob became Israel, the chosen nation, Esau's line, Edom, faded into history. But before we close the book on him, we must ask, what is Esau's legacy really? And what does his life still whisper to us today? The forgotten twin. From the very beginning, Esau's story was defined in comparison. He wasn't just Esau, he was Jacob's brother. The twin who didn't get the blessing. The one who sold his birthright. And for many, that's all they remember. But Scripture offers us a more layered view. Esau wasn't a godless brute. He wasn't wicked in the same way Pharaoh or Ahab were. He was a man shaped by pain, by family fractures, by cultural pressures. A man who forgave Jacob when most would have sought revenge. A man who built his own people, raised sons, and founded a nation. Yes, he made impulsive choices. Yes, he married against the wishes of his family. Yes, he underestimated the weight of covenant. But does that make him cursed? The blessing he did receive. Let's revisit Isaac's words to Esau after the blessing was given to Jacob. Your dwelling will be away from the earth's richness. You will live by the sword. But when you grow restless, you will throw his yoke from your neck. Genesis 27 verses 39 to 40. It wasn't a curse, it was a different kind of blessing. Not one of spiritual inheritance, but one of survival, strength, and future autonomy. Esau did throw off Jacob's yoke. He became his own man. His descendants carved out their place in the ancient world. And there's something powerful about that. Not every path is the chosen path. But even outside the chosen line, God still sees. God's complex view of Esau. Centuries later, in Malachi 1 verses 2 to 3, God says, Jacob I loved, but Esau I hated. Strong words. But does hated here mean personal animosity? In ancient Hebrew context, it was a comparison of election, not emotion. Loved meant chosen for covenant. Rejected or hated meant not chosen. God was not cursing Esau as a person. He was highlighting the difference between covenant lines. And yet, even in rejection, Esau had a future. God still gave him land, still gave him descendants, still fulfilled prophetic promises to him. That's mercy. That's grace. Esau in the New Testament. Esau doesn't vanish from Scripture after Genesis. In Hebrews 12 verses 16 to 17, he's mentioned again. See that no one is sexually immoral or godless like Esau, who for a single meal sold his inheritance rights. Here Esau is used as a warning, not a villain. A warning about short-sightedness. About trading the eternal for the temporary. Esau's mistake was not that he wasn't loved by God. It was that he didn't value what God offered. And that's where his story still speaks today. What is your legacy? Are you chasing temporary fulfillment and ignoring eternal promises? Are you living like Esau, strong, capable, but disconnected from God's covenant? Because the lesson of Esau isn't that some people are doomed. It's that we must choose what matters most. God gave Jacob the covenant, but he gave Esau the choice. And we too stand at crossroads, each day asking, will I honor what God offers me? Or will I trade it for what feels good now? Let's talk. Have you ever felt like Esau? Like the one passed over, misunderstood, or compared to someone else? Your story matters. Someone else may find healing in it. Like this video, if Esau's story touched something in you, share it with someone who's carrying invisible wounds from comparison or rejection. And don't forget to subscribe for more deep biblical storytelling. Esau wasn't cursed. He was complex. He was human. And in many ways, he's a mirror for us all. Imperfect, emotional, searching, but still seen by God. The legacy of Esau is not just about rivalry. It's about reconciliation. It's about the mercy of God that still provides even when we fall short. So today, if you feel unseen, if you feel like your story is second place, remember Esau, and remember the God who still gave him a future.